Yeah. So the Iranian position hasn't really changed since I think the paper was first presented. Initially, it was a 10-point, and then later became 14 points. But that was presented April 7th, April 10th. So we're now closing in on almost 2 months since then, and Iran's position hasn't changed. Now, the good news, the good and bad news. On the bad news front, one of the original demands was the ceasefire in Lebanon, and that ceasefire is now it's finished. It's kaput. We did get some indication that Trump ordered Bibi not to bomb Beirut, so maybe Bibi's listening to him on that front. But the rest of southern Lebanon is getting hammered.
Yeah. Today's a bad day. And there's been apparently fights in the security cabinet between them today. And Bibi telling other ministers that no, there is no limitations for us in Beirut. But then Cut saying, yeah, there is limit. So there's a debate happening. And I think the power struggle is happening literally live as we speak between Trump and Netanyahu.
Yeah, Trump is trying to assert himself, but the control of the Zionist lobby is just we can't pretend that it doesn't exist. It is quite real and quite powerful.
Do you think he'll be able to stop Netanyahu in Lebanon at all?
It looks like he stopped them in Beirut, so at least at least one night of respite. But see, Israel's main thrust, it's going to bomb. It's going to try to turn Lebanon into Gaza. Don't need too many buildings standing. But to the extent that Hezbollah goes underground, that doesn't affect Hezbollah's ability to fight. And what we've seen is that Hezbollah's effectiveness, particularly with drones, is increasing, not diminishing. Yeah. So they're really inflicting some significant casualties on Israel. I'm not sure how long Israel can keep this up, because it ends up being a bit of a Pyrrhic victory. So yeah, they can drop bombs from 10,000, 20,000 feet, get away with it, celebrate, but it doesn't change the situation on the ground as far as who's controlling territory. And the further inland Israel tries to push, the more losses they're going to suffer.
Yeah, I saw a report. They're trying to buy nets from Europe to be able to protect the equipment and the soldiers from the onslaught of Hezbollah drones. Mm-hmm. Seems Hezbollah's are getting heavily rearmed.
Yeah,
I'm guessing from Iran, and Iran seems to be getting heavily armed by mainly China.
Don't rule out the possibility of being rearmed by Russia as well.
You think Russia has the capacity with the war it's dealing with?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Russia's got a far greater, Russia can walk and chew gum at the same time. They're fighting against NATO in Ukraine. They're fighting against NATO actually in Africa and the Sahel.
Oh really? The one in I think Mali or something.
Yeah,
is that it?
Yeah. So
I didn't know NATO's involved in that one.
Oh yeah. I mean, not overtly. But it's clearly French and CIA money that's backing these jihadist rebels that have been attacking the government. So Israel's support for Ukraine and provision of weapons to Ukraine they're definitely given Russia every opportunity to retaliate in kind. So, but what was clear is, despite the efforts to destroy Hezbollah over the last 2 years, Israel failed. And not only did they fail, but Hezbollah rearmed and retrained. That's the important thing. These people flying these drones, they got trained. They didn't you don't just open the box, take the drone out, and start flying it.
Doesn't come with a manual?
Yeah, even if it comes with a manual, man, you got to sit down and read it.
I tried. I remember trying to fly one of these drones, and the ones that they would use in places like this a while ago, a couple of years ago. They're actually very difficult to fly when I tried it. Very, very difficult to fly.
Yeah, it's not even if you've been playing video games all your life, it doesn't necessarily mean you can just jump on and do it.
Yeah. There is one piece of positive news. There was a report coming out of Fars News that the person that was in Qatar was Galibaf, and he was, and the trip was apparently successful, and it was dealing with the unfreezing of assets. Iran wants $12 billion now, and then $12 billion in 30 or 60 days, I think it is. And they've discussed the lifting of sanctions on Iranian oil and petrochemicals and some of the other sanctions, and the lifting of the American blockade. It seems they've had progress. But then you see Trump's comments. Those are bizarre. Like, that kind of confuses me again. Obviously, that's what you always get with Trump. But he says, one of them, he's like, I don't want to send the enriched uranium. I'm not comfortable sending it to Russia and China. Even though a couple of days ago, yesterday, I think, or a couple of days ago, he said, I'm happy if the enriched uranium goes to another country.
Right.
And then he says, he said, we're not talking about any easing of sanctions or giving money. But that's contrary to all the reports we're getting. And then he says that they're starting to give us things that they have to give us. If they do, that's great. If they don't, Hexeth will finish the job. So we're back to threats. And lastly, he even threatens to, if Oman tries to close the Strait of Hormuz, if they don't behave like everybody else, we'll have to blow them up.
Right. Oman,
an American ally with American bases there. So yeah, then you see comments like this, and I'm like, what's going on? It's like you get great progress one day, and next day you get messages like this. I don't know if it's part of the whole negotiations process, or
no, well, there's clearly spin and propaganda coming out, but what Trump is saying and doing doesn't advance the negotiations. It doesn't turn around and make the Iranians go, oh man, we better get an agreement with him, or he might do something to us. They're past that. Very much past that. So I don't think Iran is playing any kind of games with respect to their positions. They've made their positions quite clear. Unfreeze the assets, lift the sanctions, stop the war in Lebanon and Gaza. We're going to run the Strait of Hormuz, and we're going to collect a user's fee or an environmental fee. Call it what you will, but we're going to collect a fee for that. They have not made a specific demand that the U.S. pay X amount of dollars for reparations. That they haven't done. So that I'd put out there as questionable.
Okay, just now, hold on. I think the head of the parliament is listening to you as we speak. He just put out a tweet. Iran will not be pushed back by Trump's rhetoric from its red lines. Just now, the right to enrich uranium, possession of enriched uranium, authority over the Strait of Hormuz, and the removal of sanctions. It is obvious Trump, seeking a way out of the strategic deadlock, alternates between issuing threats and appealing for an agreement. So
yeah, he must be tuned in listening to us.
Man, they're saying the right thing at the right time. Information warfare.
But we've seen this. I don't know how much you followed it before. But we saw the same thing with respect to Russia, Ukraine, and peace talks on that front. That the Western journalists kept having a tough time wrapping their mind around the fact that Russia had made it very clear they weren't going to give up the former Ukrainian oblasts. Kherson, Zaporizhia, Donetsk, Luhansk were now permanently part of Russia, and that NATO had to get the hell out of Ukraine. And, so Russia was always very consistent with its demands. It didn't change. And the West kept trying to read something into, slight change in tone or that, my point is we're seeing the same thing here. Iran has been crystal clear. No ambiguity, no subtext, crystal clear about what they want. Question is Trump willing to give it? And depends on the time of the day. Trump maybe at 1 o'clock was on board. Then at 2 o'clock, after he talked to Miriam Adelson, he changed his mind. And then at 3 o'clock, he talked to J.D. Vance and changed his mind. And, so it's back and forth. It's just he's a human ping pong ball.
Yeah. And this is the best comment he made. which is in line with the comments in the last 48 hours that didn't exist 3 days ago, 4 days ago. Trump, we would like to have the countries join the Abraham's Accords, Saudi, the UAE, which is already part of it, Qatar and others. I think they owe it to us. I'm not sure we should make an Iran deal if they don't join. And then the report asks for clarification. So the Iran deal might be contingent on this. He's like, I don't want to say that. We can make a great deal with this guy right here, but it's a lot nastier. He's pointing to Hexeth, like a deal as in war. What is that? I've been trying to understand it for the last 48 days. Is it just trying to please Netanyahu, give him some political win in Israel? Is it him trying to get a big diplomatic win back home? Or is it him just abiding by the pressure from the donors?
Well, can we have all of the above?
Well, yeah, you can, yeah.
Yeah, because I think what you've outlined is not mutually exclusive. I think it's a combination of all those factors. And this is, ultimately using the Abraham Accords as a way he could make some significant concessions and then come back and claim it was all for the purpose of saving Israel. Because look, I got all these people to sign on the Abraham Accords.
That is such a bizarre thing to now be part of the whole discussion. And the Gulf countries are unrelated to these negotiations in the first place. This is between Iran and the US. These are the two countries getting into war. It's like China, it's like Zelensky and Putin putting a clause in their agreement, a requirement now that Taiwan needs to reunify with China. This is something completely unrelated. And this is literally it. It's like, what does that have to do with the US? We're talking about Abraham's Accords all the way in the Middle East. How's that going to help the average American voter that's looking at the gas prices in the US? It's so bizarre.
Yeah. I mean, and did he really say that? Was he now saying that Taiwan should reunite with China?
No, I was making a joke. I was saying,
okay.
Imagine it's like the same as Putin and Zelensky adding a new clause in their agreement that Taiwan should reunify with China. It's like, how is that related to what we're seeing? And now this is what we're going through now. I feel so sorry for the Gulf countries dealing with this craziness. Yeah,
no, listen, it's going. It's the ultimate roller coaster ride.
Yeah, I'm just looking now, and there's another piece of news that came in this morning. According to Channel 12, I actually interviewed someone from Channel 12 today. Should have asked them that question. Israeli authorities have been informed that all U.S. military aircraft will evacuate Ben Gurion Airport within 72 hours of an agreement being signed, relocating to bases in Europe. The aircraft will remain on standby, ready to return to Ben Gurion Airport if and when fighting with Iran resumes. So we could start seeing military redeployment as we get closer to an agreement, or as soon as we sign an agreement. Well, if they do decide,
that would be a sign to look for. If they start withdrawing those air units and air assets out of the region, you can say, okay, hey, this may really be real. But it's not clear who the real decision maker on this is. I mean, the White House is keeping up the pretense that it's Trump, but I think that there's growing doubts about his mental fitness to do his job, and so I don't know how much of this is under J.D. Vance's purview. I know that he's been in touch with another person close to the whole negotiations. So that Vance may be playing a bigger role than we know.
Well, that's a good sign, because at least you'll have some progress with Vance, someone that never wanted this war. And we are seeing like a very change of tonality now in the last week on the American side.
It is. I think basically it's Vance trying to save Trump from himself.
No. We've got Lindsey Graham putting out this post talking about the Abraham's Accords. However, the biggest, so he's saying, I very much appreciate Trump's efforts. I got complete confidence in him, etc. And so he says, however, the biggest news out of the cabinet meeting is President Trump's determination to expand the Abraham's Accords to include Saudi making peace with Israel. This will be the biggest change in the Middle East in thousands of years, effectively ending the Arab-Israeli conflict. I'm convinced that Trump, above all others, has the ability to make this happen. He has been a good, reliable partner to Saudi and the Crown Prince, and no one has been a better friend to Israel than Trump. I've been working on normalizing for years, including the Biden administration, as this will lead to lasting peace. I'll do everything in my power to make this work, working with a bipartisan fashion to help Trump achieve peace between Saudi and Israel. So now about peace between Saudi and Israel. We started negotiating between Iran and the US, and now it's between Saudi and Israel. Is there any chance, is there any scenario that any of those countries would accept to sign on to the Abraham's Accords?
No, UAE has already signed on, is my understanding.
Yeah,
but I don't see and did Bahrain as well?
Yeah. They're the only two countries that I know of in the Gulf that are.
So the rest of them, I don't see it. And in fact, the fact the Saudis, they didn't waste a minute yesterday. As soon as that came out, they said, no, that's not happening until the rights of the Palestinian people are addressed.
Yeah, and then Qatar followed through, and then Pakistan followed through as well, and then Iran as well, because Trump was talking about Iran normalizing with the Israelis, and they made it very clear that this is completely out of the question.
Right.
On the military front as well, like a military option, I think it has to be completely off the table, because now a report came in that every major underground missile base in Iran is now back in operation, either fully or partially, and about 80% of all tunnel entrances that were collapsed during the war have been restored as of this moment. Some minor clearing still needs to happen in some heavy hit places. It's only been a month? It hasn't been a month since the ceasefire, has it?
Yeah, no, it has. It's been more than a month. So remember, the ceasefire, they didn't get it fully finalized until April 15th. So we're now at May 27th. Yeah, or
27th,
yeah, 28th, I guess, where you are. Just turned the 28th. That's 1 week or 1 month, 12 days.
Yeah, and they managed to rebuild that quickly. That is crazy. That is crazy.
Yeah.
Another thing I want to ask you about that's coming to Ukraine. Have you been keeping track of what's happening there in the letter that Zelensky sent to Congress and to Trump? Of him asking for air defense munitions. Yes, I'll read it out to you now. That came in not long ago. Actually, I've got the full statement. Let me have it. Essentially, without reading the full statement, he sent an urgent letter to Trump saying, look, I know you guys are busy with Iran, but we need air defense munitions desperately now in Ukraine. And that comes after the warning. Told me about the warning that Lavrov gave Rubio. So since that warning, we saw that big attack that we spoke about with the Oreshnik and the various missiles. Now Zelensky's asking for air defense munitions from Trump and the administration. I'll try to find the full statement, but that just came out. What's the situation like in Ukraine, and why for that request to come in, an urgent request, and Zelensky I think put out a video about it as well. Are we just seeing now preparations of the focus to move from Iran to Ukraine?
No. So it is. I just want to go back and do the calculations. I think we did this once before, but the United States, starting in 2023, sent a total of about 1,000. I think it was closer to 860, but let's use 1,000 PAC-3 Patriot missiles. I don't know how many different missile batteries that was, but it's not a lot. And when you understand, so we got 1,000 missiles, and to shoot down a Russian cruise missile or a Russian ballistic missile or a Russian drone, you're going to have to use at least 2 of those PAC-3 missiles, right? So let's say we got 1,000. So that means they are capable of downing 500 Russian ballistic or cruise missiles, not the Garan drones. Okay, so how many Russian ballistic missiles and cruise missiles have been fired at Ukraine since January of 2023? That number is 8 to 12,000. That's just ballistic and cruise missiles. If you put in drones, I think the number goes up over 30,000. The numbers don't add up. So they could have used up their entire supply of PAC-3 missiles trying to take out 500 Russian ballistic and cruise missiles. And there's still 7,500 to take out. Let's go with the low number, is 8,000. That means they would need 16,000 PAC-3 missiles potentially to have defeated and taken down all these Russian missiles. The total number of PAC-3 missiles that have been produced in the United States going back to 2015, that was the first full year of production, is 6,025 or 6,320. Hello?
Yeah.
The numbers don't add up.
Yeah, most missiles, most Russian missiles are just not being intercepted.
Yeah.
That's the thing. That for them to have any munitions left, any interceptors left, they must. We saw the Kiev. I've been told that the damage. I haven't seen any videos. I haven't had the time, but I was told by a guest earlier the damage has been very significant in that big missile barrage in Kiev.
Yeah, and Russia's just getting started. They're giving everybody a couple of days to get out of town. They've warned them, get the hell out of town, or you'll be vulnerable. So the point is, even if the United States had some PAC-3s to give, the reality is the United States cannot even produce the number of PAC-3s that would be required to give Ukraine at least some minimal chance of shooting them down. And then, add into that the number of PAC-3s that are in Saudi Arabia and Qatar and Israel. And then how many missiles has Iran fired, both last June and now? So I said, this is what has been exposed is that the United States does not have an air defense system. We don't have one. We got some potential air defense assets, but they're not really integrated fully into a system that has a reasonable chance of shooting these missiles down.
I don't know. I think their ability to shoot down is good. They just don't have the interceptors. I think even if they're good at intercepting, there's no ammunition there, and there's no capacity to make enough.
Yeah, I would say the evidence appears to indicate that they're not even good at shooting them down. Remember, they apparently still had some PAC-3s available in Qatar at Al Udeid, and that drone flew in there and took out a $1 billion radar system.
The 3 drones that hit that one of them managed to hit the power plant here in the UAE.
Yeah.
But the interceptors, are they designed for drones or more for missiles? Are they good for drones as well?
Yeah, the drones will be easier because they're slower flying. They're not designed. They're really not designed to go after these ballistic missiles. The missiles are too damn fast.
I don't know what that will do to the region, though, because you have the Gulf now looking for security. You've got the US needs a couple of years to rebuild their stockpiles. You've got Iran feeling more emboldened. China and Russia looking at Iran saying, wow, okay, they managed to pull this off. Now they've got more leverage. They're likely going to control the Strait of Hormuz. They're likely going to get some assets unfrozen. They're likely going to get some of the American presence in the region gone. The Gulf will have to figure out somehow to get air defense systems while also improving relations with Iran. And Israel's left in a position now where they have to reconsider everything because that umbrella, the security umbrella by the US, I just think the US doesn't have the will or the capabilities of continuing. We just got that report that the American stockpiles of air defense munitions were depleted defending Israel, while Israel's were preserved, not saying preserved in general, but relative to the Americans. So I just don't know how the Middle East is going to look like after this.
Well, and let's face it, the Israeli systems are junk anyway. They get David Sling and they're no good. But they get, they build a reputation on mediocrity, and it has been repeatedly demonstrated by Iran. Iran's able to circumvent their missile defense system.
How do you think the region would look like? How's the Middle East going to look like in the next couple of years?
If the Russian and Chinese vision comes to pass, one, you've eliminated U.S. military presence, so it'll be basically gone from the area, and these countries, they will then be able to focus upon their own development without, because Iran's not one to go exporting revolution and trying to undermine the other states. Frankly, the Saudis have had more conflicts with Qatar or with the United Arab Emirates than they've actually had with Iran over the years. And Iran's tried to maintain, equal relations with everyone except for the UAE. The UAE is the one that has getting especially targeted now by Iran.
Yeah. I think that one would change as well. So you think American presence will be gone? Do you think there'll be more? Would China start to expand its influence in the region, or they'll stay out of it?
Oh no, they're expanding. They're using Pakistan primarily, but no, this is the whole Belt and Road Initiative. There's a lot of damage that's been done in Iran. Guess whose engineers and workers are going to show up in Iran to help rebuild the country? China.
Yeah.
I had a. Have you ever talked to or met a fellow? His name is Alex White. He's got a YouTube channel called Reporter-Fi, so Reporter FY Fi Media, and he is a derivatives trader, but has lived in China now for several years, and just very, very fascinating take on China and how it's going about asserting its authority in the world. It's completely different from the model that we're used to in the United States, where we're going to go in and take charge. We're going to tell people what to do. We're going to be the boss. We're going to hold you hostage because we got we got your money. And the Chinese have an entirely different approach.
Yeah, I've sent it to the team to get him on the show. So he's talking about their way of approaching business and approaching other countries is very different to the US. So these countries are going to have have different dynamics when it comes to their foreign policy.
Yeah. I mean, again, he's a Canadian, but he's lived.
We don't listen to Canadians, Larry. Come on. He's an exception.
Depends on which part of Canada they're from. If they're from Alberta, hey, we got to pay attention to them. No, but he's a derivatives trader, and when he gets into the issues of the size of this derivative market, and because part of what I interviewed him earlier today for my own channel, it'll be posted later this week. But the derivative
platform,
Countercurrents on YouTube.
Okay.
It is the derivatives market is $700 trillion to $1 quadrillion. Enormous. And the potential for an economic collapse. You remember the collapse that happened in 2008, and that was caused by real estate derivatives. So people would you'd buy. So for example, you'd start by buying a normal mortgage, and so you say, hey, this is my investment. I bought this. I bought the mortgage owned by Larry Johnson, and I'm going to earn 3% per year. And then someone makes a bet that, hey, I bet that this guy that's holding Larry Johnson's mortgage, I bet he's going to go bust. And so I'm going to bet X amount of dollars on that. And then I have to buy insurance. And so this thing multiplies as it goes out. And so when that thing started imploding, there was nothing underneath it to catch it. And what Alex says is right now, that globally, the world is in a much, much worse situation economically because the markets are not making sense. We've had a 20% disruption in the supply of oil, and yet the future supply is saying, "Oh yeah, no, you're gonna be getting it for less than $90 a barrel in 2 months." Excuse me?
Yeah.
We're dealing right now with something that's unprecedented, and the financial markets are treating it like it's no big deal, and it's an enormous big deal, but we just haven't felt the pain yet.
How about China's approach to Russia and the war there? Are they? Because we saw Putin just met Xi, and then he went back and started making those threats, and there was that heavy attack on Ukraine. Is it related to China in any way? Is China? Alex was telling me earlier he believes that China was restraining Putin from escalating, but after what happened in Iran, that restraint is gone now.
Yeah,
is that possible?
Yeah, I think so. Well, I think there are a couple of things at play. Russia had not escalated attacks in Kiev on military and intelligence targets, in part, I believe, because there were U.S. and Western officers, intelligence operatives, etc., at those locations. And the Russians had calculated that if they killed them, if they attacked and caused those casualties, that Russia may not have been ready or prepared to take on all of NATO. But now they are. Now I think they're confident that they've got a sufficient supply of ballistic cruise missiles, hypersonic missiles, and they've built up their reserves. So the number of soldiers that are actually on active duty now exceed 1.5 million. So that they're now in a position that they could fight NATO if necessary. And so that's, now that they're prepared to do that, I think that's one of the reasons we see them both stepping up the attacks on Kyiv and warning diplomats to get out, because they're going to attack. It's not so much they're going to attack diplomatic facilities, but they're going to attack facilities where Westerners are working side by side with Ukrainians, and if they remain there, they'll die.
Yeah, apparently they. I'm trying to full statement. Oh, there's the statement by Zelensky. So he says, I'll be brief. I won't read the whole thing. It is important that America hear Ukraine. We understand that much of the world's attention is currently focused on the war in Iran, but the war here in Europe must also be brought to an end, a very bloody war that is already in its 5th year at full scale. The sooner we'll be able to provide greater protection against ballistic threats, the sooner we'll be able to make diplomacy work. As long as Russia continues to rely on missiles, its interest in diplomacy is not real. We must correct this, and we can only do this with America. Ukraine is grateful to America for all of its support, and Ukraine will be even more grateful for a dignified peace and guaranteed security. All of this is possible if there is sufficient determination. So in that request, he's asking for the air defense munitions. I don't have a question on that one. I wanted to ask about Iran and the UAE. Mm-hmm. Do you think they'll be able to mend relations? Because what if the US pulling out? Because now we're seeing a balance of power shift. What if that balance of power shifts but does not do so peacefully? What if Israel does not accept it? It keeps fighting, or what if Iran ends up being more aggressive than expected? What about if the UAE wants to align itself closer to Israel, and that leads to some sort of conflict or some sort of friction?
Well, I think it's entirely in the hands of the UAE to figure out whether or not they want to live at peace with their neighbor. Remember, it's not just Iran and the UAE. The Saudis and the UAE have been at odds. Qatar and the UAE have been at odds. And this was another, factoid I had forgotten. But you remember a few years back when the other Gulf countries, particularly Saudi Arabia and UAE, they were very angry with Qatar and were trying to restrict movement of goods into Qatar. And the country that came through that provided assistance, material assistance to Qatar was Iran, right? So Iran has shown a willingness to, it's willing to get along with everybody there. It doesn't have a fanatical religious agenda that we're going to go and impose Shia Islam on all of these different countries. No, it's been looking to, to get along with them. And it's been the United States that's been really the provocateur in this, trying to egg on and, supply funding to the MEK, supply funding to different independence movements in the Baluchis, so they carry out attacks inside Iran against Iranian government targets. So the United States has been the provocateur there. So I see the nature of the diplomats with Ghalibaf and then Arachi, quite professional. And in fact, frankly, Larijani was equally gifted at this. So it's the West that ends up looking like the extremist now.
Do you not worry that maybe we get a different Iran this time around under Mujtaba? He seems really upset. Obviously, he just lost his family, might be vengeful. His rhetoric towards Israel hasn't changed. He's talking about a new world order, a shift of power. He's talking about the US being out of the region, not being dependent. That he's using all the same rhetoric as his father. I didn't watch his father closely over the years. I don't know if Mujtaba is even more aggressive or not. But I'd say, I think it's safe to say around the same rhetoric. But when it comes to action, because obviously rhetoric and action in Iran hasn't been aligned over the last few decades, from a rhetoric perspective, we're going to wipe out Israel, but in terms of action, they avoided war, direct war. With Mustafa, could that change? Wouldn't you worry that possibility with that U.S. deterrence that maybe Mustafa wants more of the islands in the region, wants more influence in the Gulf, wants to get revenge on some of these Gulf countries, the vulnerable ones like Bahrain?
Well, getting revenge would be is not, to me, not a sign of extremism. It's a sign of sanity. If somebody,
Military revenge.
Yeah, if somebody murders your wife, your child, your father, your mother, show me a man in the world that if someone did that to his family, we got a whole slew of movies in Hollywood that are based upon that whole premise of, by God, you kill my wife, you kill my family, I'm going to come kill you.
But they've already done that. They've already bombed the hell out of the Gulf.
Well,
I would call that more than revenge.
Well, they haven't taken full revenge on that. And again, the strikes on Qatar, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Kuwait, and Bahrain, those were all came in the wake of those countries allowing their territory to be used as launch pads for the U.S. attacks, the U.S. and Israeli attacks. So I see, the relationship actually, I believe, between Mustafa, the Ayatollah, between Arachi, the foreign minister. Again, Arachi, my understanding, he served as a medic with the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. Ghalibaf, who was a full-time soldier in the IRGC. Then Pezeshkian as president. I think these guys all share they share a common bond that they're combat veterans from the last major war. And so
I just hope, I hope they don't. Just for the sake of peace in the region, I think that bygones need to be bygones. That they need to kind of forgive one another. The Gulf need to forgive Iran for the strikes. Iran needs to forgive the Gulf for whether encouraging this war or housing American bases or whatever the involvement was. While we're speaking, by the way, just Lisa, if you can play the clip I sent you now. But it's just in Lebanon, they're seeing bombing as we speak.
Yeah,
so we're talking about ceasefire and stuff. Lebanon,
where's the bombing taking place? Do we know?
Not Beirut yet. This one is Tyre in southern Lebanon.
Yeah. So
Israeli airstrikes continue. Let me see. Israeli airstrikes continue now as we speak on the city of Tyre.
That's so. Israel right now is confining itself to attacking the south. So Trump reportedly asked them, told Bibi, don't bomb Beirut. So they're still hoping that they can get some sort of deal up there. But, I'm seeing the reports with Hezbollah carrying out at least a dozen attacks a day and more on Israeli targets, troops, vehicles, tanks. I think I think the Israeli Defense Force has got its hands full.
Yeah. According to the report on why Netanyahu is not striking Beirut, obviously because Trump asked him not to, he did not greenlight it. And the reason is they're worried about Iranian retaliation directly against Israel. That is actually a valid concern.
Yeah.
I don't think Iran would hesitate this time around to actually strike Israel directly because they know the US doesn't want to get involved. So maybe this is their time to make it clear for Israel, like, hey, I've talked about how the balance of power shifted and Israel won't have that same level of impunity. Well, one way Iran could make it clear is by striking Israel.
Right. Yeah. So right now, Israel's operating saying, well, we're just reacting to attacks by Hezbollah in the south. But anything that goes up north and goes into Beirut again, Israel's they're killing children. These bombs released by these aircraft, they're not precision weapons at all. These are area weapons, and you can call